that, let's get started. Darrell, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Julie. Great introduction there. So as Julie said, my name is Darrell Butler, and I'll be taking you through the Aura roadmap update in our latest release that was released back in December of 2021. Just kind of a quick cautionary note. Any content in here is subject to change. Most of it is actually said, as I said, we released the Aura latest platform release back in December, but I will kind of talk to some of the futures and some of the roadmap items that may change depending on the release cycle. All right. Back about, I guess, just over a year ago now, or probably more than a year ago now, we've changed our strategic direction in kind of two areas. And the first area, from an Aura perspective, is that we moved to a DevOps model. And what that means is that we actually focus on delivering to our OneCloud private in particular, infrastructure first. And we deliver to OneCloud private typically 3 to 4 times per year. Now, that's not saying that we're forgetting our on-premise or what we typically call our enterprise customers. We still do updates to the enterprise, but now we're actually providing what we're calling an innovation update once per calendar year. And I'll talk a little bit about the cycle going forward. But from a customer perspective, if you want the latest and greatest features, OneCloud private, our OneCloud offer is the way to go. If you're kind of not as feature intensive, then it's okay to work on the once per year innovation updates from an enterprise perspective. All right. So part of kind of moving to the DevOps model was becoming more predictable. And we heard this from our customers and our partners that some of the release cycles with the Aura kind of didn't make some sense. We kind of delivered ad hocly, some people would call it, but there was a lot of predictability there. So coupling with this DevOps model, you will see 3 types of updates. The innovation update I already talked about, which is a new functionality that will typically be in the last quarter of every year. But the other 2 key points are always at the top of everybody's mind is security updates. So that's the typical updates that if we have any break fix issues, hot fixes, things like that in the Linux or in the kernel or in the software itself. We are releasing those every 2 months, and we've been doing that since 2020, and we actually haven't missed one of these security updates yet. So if you are more engaged in the security and whatnot, we're really trying to be more predictable there. So right now we're at every 2 months for security updates, and this is kind of if we do discover something from a security perspective, obviously we do fix it in real time. But this every 2 months we actually pull together all of the security updates across all the applications for Aura and pull them into one package that you can apply. We are moving this to once a month versus once every 2 months. There was a condition that was with AVP that we had to kind of follow the 2 month cycle. So you will probably see this change in the upcoming month to actually be even more rigorous. The other type of update is on the services side, and that's any non-security updates that we've actually applied, any corrective fixes, hot patches, interoperability issues that we discover. And we roll those up, and every 4 months, we actually deliver a service pack to the install base. And this one we've been doing since February of 2021. So from a customer perspective, obviously, we do recommend that you do follow the security updates and the service updates every 2 and every 4 months. In innovation updates, and you'll see kind of this in the next slide. We are delivering innovation updates every 12 months, but if you're not interested in the actual feature set in an innovation update, then it is okay to kind of skip one and apply it every 12 or 24 months. All right, from a schedule perspective, this is what it looks like. So what we're really trying to do is become, like I said, more predictable and more consistent with delivering, the fixes, security updates, patches, as well as the innovation updates every year. The idea being is that if we're being more predictable and we're actually advertising what is happening from a release perspective, you can be more predictable in actually applying it to your systems and making sure that you get the latest fixes as well as the latest security updates. Right. The other thing you probably noticed is even though the latest Aura release really doesn't have a release number on it, when you get down to the component level, you will see release numbers. So you'll notice that release 8 is on the top. That's going to be supported till April of 2023, or I should say March of 2023. There will be a service pack in April of 2023 that will kind of pull everything together. But you'll notice that we moved and skipped into an R10 or a release 10.1. We didn't release 9. We took the time and thought it was a little bit different enough to kind of move to a new model. So what you'll see coming out from a component perspective will be 10.1. 10.2, 10.3, and so on and so forth. There will never be a release 11. So from release 10 on, what you will get once a year is an innovation update. The good thing is that because we're moving to this innovation model, we're working to make the upgrades a lot less painless and quicker as well. So there's a lot of focus on right now of basically maintainability and serviceability from an Aura perspective. All right. So here you can kind of see the overall strategy. We're really trying to give you more information of what we're planning and what we're delivering and when, and probably more importantly, when we're delivering it. So you'll notice that, as I mentioned before, there's 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, 10.4, 10.5 will take us out right till the end of 2028. And what you'll see is that in the last quarter of every year, we will deliver the innovation update. The other thing you may notice here as well is that the evens are just kind of normal release cycles, and it's actually a 2-year design support cycle. But the odds, you'll notice that it's EMSS. It stands for Extended Manufacturer Support Software. Those will actually have 3 years of design support. And a few other things there, like as I said before, you can actually update every year. We're trying to get to the point where it's seamless. We like to kind of follow, if you want, the Apple model, where your iOS is pushed out to your device, and you just kind of at some point decide to apply that latest release. That's where we want to get to. Not there yet, but that's kind of the model that we're working towards, right? So it's up to you. If 10.1, I would highly recommend that you get 10.1 just because there's a lot of cleanup there and a lot of service updates and security updates. But once you kind of get on the release train, then it's kind of up to you whether you kind of take the 1 or 2 year cycle to jump from innovation release to innovation release. Right. And this is kind of if you do want to update every year, that's fine. All right, the other thing that changed, I said we changed our strategy in 2 areas. We just talked about the DevOps and kind of why we did that. The other thing that customers were asking for as well was on the commercial side and coming up with a subscription focus. So for the latest release or release 10 lineup, it is a subscription only offer, or subscription only or cloud, obviously, because we deliver into the cloud as well. The buy to current will still be available through mid-March of 2023. And if you're not familiar, buy to current is basically when you purchase release 10 licenses, when you go into PLDS, you basically pick release 8 licenses and deploy as release 8. So you can still do that until mid-March of next year. The AACC offer will be moving to subscription and cloud only as well. And then from a release 8 perspective, it did actually go into sale for when we actually launched release 10, but you still will be able to do release ads up until mid-March of 2023 in line with the end of manufacturer support date for release 10. When this moves us up to mid-March of 2023, that's when you'll actually then see the end of sale for the release 8 license ads. Release 8 will go into manufacturer support at that time as well. This is typical when we, as part of our Avaya lifecycle support policy, once we actually release a new software package, the N-1 kind of is what people used to refer to it as, goes into manufacturer support 1 year from that date. So it kind of gives you a year to get up to the newest release. For release 8, for the first time, we will actually have an extended release 8 security update package, and that will actually include manufacturer support. It will be for a fee, and you'll probably see, we're hoping to get the offer def. It's going through our introduction process right now, and we will look to get that published and kind of do a little bit of a roadshow on what that offer includes in the next couple months. When we get to mid-March of 2023, last but not least, that will mark the end of the release 8 buy to current. So at that point, you will have to purchase release 10.1, or actually we'll be up to 10.2 at that point. So the buy to current then would be, purchase 10.2 and deploy as 10.1. All right. All right, that's kind of the end of, like I said, the strategic changes from the software delivery perspective as well as the commercial perspective. Now we'll kind of jump into the platform itself. So from an Aura perspective, and I think everybody probably knows, Aura kind of sits in the middle and kind of is a big part of the offer itself. And as we kind of talked to before, you actually can get this as a full cloud offer with One Cloud Private, or you can now get, you still get it as a premise offer, but it will be under the One Cloud subscription. All right, and from a customer journey perspective, I like this chart because it kind of puts it in perspective. We still have quite a bit of install base out there that's on some older releases. So we've just kind of a bit of a use case here. So if you're actually still on release 6, because we do have quite a bit of our customer base still on release 6, you've missed the media server introduction where you can kind of get rid of your gateways, get rid of your DSPs. You're actually missing over 5 years of client improvements and security updates. Right? There's a lot of hardware and end of sales and end of support, as well as VMware in there as well with the VE and the OS and the Red Hat Linux. There's a lot of reduced TCO from the footprint that the actual solution takes up, as well as some other efficiencies that we built in there. Which includes capacity improvements, as well as we actually counted them up. We say over 70. I think the actual number ended up being about 76 new features if you're actually on an older release back to release 6 that you're missing out on. So, not only from a features and functionality perspective, but typically the ecosystem around the clients is much improved and has changed quite a bit. And I'm sure as a customer, you don't want to be 5 years behind on security updates. All right, I won't spend too much time here, but this is a good slide to kind of summarize. It's pretty much what I'll go through from a new and improved functionality, security updates, application, and the AES and the Elite on the CC Elite side, as well as some improved maintainability and serviceability, as well as some lifecycle items that I'll go through as well. All right, first one, Spaces Calling. So with release 10.1, this is actually available in release 8.1.3 as well, but you can now do, there's full directory integration between Spaces and the Aura directory. So you can now actually make Aura calls to Aura endpoints through Spaces. For myself specifically, I exclusively use Spaces now as my form of communication, whether it's video calls, or just kind of regular calls to colleagues and anyone I'm trying to contact. This can be done through the client itself, or you can actually go through the web version as well, and we'll use the WebRTC there to make sure that you can use the dial pad. All right. And this kind of is just another feather in the cap of Spaces, with it's already the video Spaces to Spaces calling that has already been available. All right, back to more kind of what we'll call the, I guess, the true Aura kind of features and functionality. Internet-friendly gateway, or if you've seen earlier presentations or kind of seen some other documentations on this, it's also been known as edge-friendly gateway. So with the G430s and the G450s, we can now actually deploy them over the internet directly, so you don't need an expensive or an extra charge for your VPN or an MPLS link. We've actually been supporting for this. This kind of goes back to delivering the one cloud first. We've been doing this with one cloud for probably about 8 or 9 months now, before the release of 10.1. And basically, we use H248 signaling between the gateway itself at the remote site, back to the SBC at the core to create a secure tunnel itself. So we've kind of built that in there. Local media routing is supported in the initial release, as well as the secure fax. But when it comes to the LSP the BSM survivability, that will be supported in coming up in this is calendar year 2022. It should be available in the last quarter of the fiscal year. Right. Again, another great example of reducing your TCO, and this one here is ongoing TCO, right? So you can kind of get rid of that extra monthly charge for your branches. All right, next one, kind of the next couple, I believe, actually to deal with Session Manager. This one here is again, manageability, maintainability. One of the abilities that we focus on. So we've actually introduced policy-based assignment of SIP users. So this is obviously for SIP connections. So right now, when you actually assign your session managers, your primary, secondary, and tertiary to SIP user, you actually have to assign it to each SIP user one by one by one. So it kind of get a bit repetitive, not as easy to do. So with the introduction of the policy-based assignment, we now actually have the fix the way it was before, or you can create groups, which is now fixed region. So if you have a regional kind of flair that you want to do, or a location within a certain region if you're kind of really big. So what you do is you actually assign the primary, secondary, and tertiary session managers to each of those groups, and then you assign the users to those groups, and the users actually automatically pick up the settings for the primary, secondary, tertiary session managers of that group. So on the management side, it's great because it makes it easier to administer. But once we actually get the system up and running with the policy-based assignment, it actually does dynamic load balancing between the groups as well. So it's on both ends. It's kind of ease of use, as well as a little bit of dynamic allocation of resources in real time. And again, on the session manager front, we now actually allow users to have 4+1 SM registration. So you can now actually have 2 session managers in the primary data center that's associated with you, 2 in the secondary data center, as well as the local survivable BSM. So what this allows us to do, because before it was 2+1, where you had one in the primary data center and one in the secondary. So when there was a switch, it actually did take a little bit of time to do that. Now, when your session manager fails or you lose connection to it, it will automatically fire you back up in a session manager that's located in the same data center. So there's less switching time. So a little bit more redundancy and resiliency from a endpoint perspective. All right, now moving on to SMGR. So we introduced SMGR, Geographic Redundancy. I can't remember, it was back in release 8 at some point, but now we're actually adding some APIs to actually support the redundancy, and it allows you to do some health checks as well as some typical operations. I won't go through all of them there, but you can kind of see that, the APIs that you can now actually go in and retrieve the status and health of the geographic redundancy. Unless you're familiar with kind of the way this was set up before, in order to do this before, you would actually have to log into both system managers and check the status of them individually. So you couldn't actually go in and see what was happening on one or the other. You couldn't actually do the enabling or disabling of the geographic redundancy replication. You couldn't promote or kind of fall back from the secondary to the primary, as well as just kind of do a lot of management stuff. So now when you actually do have the redundancy set up on the system manager, you can log into one and basically manage most of the functionality for both. And then kind of on the, still on the system manager, again, a lot of focus on manageability and improving response times and whatnot. You can see in a lot of the APIs where we're kind of getting or updating, the tools. You can see that we've improved some of the response times, anywhere from down even just 15%, all the way up to 65% in some of the query times and the response time. So again, just kind of some examples of the things that we're working on and trying to improve that you may or may not notice, depending on if you're an advanced user and use these things a lot. And then moving on to kind of linked to SMGR, but this one is more of an upgrade enhancement through SDM. So in the past with SDM, there was it wasn't kind of the most resilient tool that we did have. There was a lot of problems with kicking off the upgrade and doing the upgrade. There would be a lot of silent failures where you would know it was failed for hours and hours and hours. You would think that it was working and it wasn't working. And a lot of it had to do with the way we actually position the upgrade. So we would start the upgrade, and part of the upgrade would be delivering the software, and then once the software is delivered, kicking off the upgrade. Well, if it fails, especially in some remote sites in the software delivery, it kind of really throws off some of the scheduling and the upgrade, just the status, if you want. So what we did in release 10.1 was we actually started using some of the VMware ESXi data store capability. So we actually do some pre-staging. I shouldn't say some, we actually do some pre-staging of the OVA. We're starting with the SMGR file or OVA first. That is the biggest one. So what happens now is the upgrade is actually not kicked off until you deliver the file. And by using the data resiliency of the VMware tools, we get less and less failures. So just like you're using any other file and delivering it through the ESXi data store, there's a lot of error correction methods and options that we didn't have ourselves that we can utilize. So we're seeing, you'll see a lot less failures, especially over low bandwidth connections. And even sometimes I've heard of stories, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but there was sometimes we would have like 2% packet loss, and for some reason SDM would fail the data transfer. So all that's gone away now, and this is kind of step one, if you want, in the upgrade improvement. I call it a program because there is a lot of focus within the Aura team in improving that, but this kind of sets us up for the future. We're now going to, now that we have SMGR working for 10.1 and 10.2, we should kind of, add the other applications in there as well, so we can do all this pre-staging and get things ready to go, and so that when we do kick off the upgrade should kind of go off without a flaw. The other thing that I'll kind of just talk a little bit about is you won't find it in any chart decks yet, but we're really trying to figure out how do we break the upgrade requirement for updating the core first before the branches. We want to be able to upgrade the branches first, just because typically the feedback we're getting is that, you know, because we actually had to upgrade the branches first, the branches are kind of a lot of times, you know, have their own hours. It could be in different regions, could be different people, you know, running with things. So it's a little bit harder to schedule and get the upgrades done. So, you know, once all the branches are done, then the core can be done. So what we're actually, you know, picturing and trying to do, and we've got a couple technical workaround, I don't know, workaround, technical strategies, I guess, to change this, is that we want to be able to upgrade the core first, so that the core is then at the latest release, and then you can actually schedule the upgrades of the branches that is at a time that's good for them, right? Because then there's instead of we just control the one schedule at the core, and then we have the many schedules and the different schedules of the branches that they can upgrade and get up to the latest release and features at a time that's good for them. And at that point, the branches are not holding up the core upgrade, which is typically the most important piece of the system. All right, push notifications. So back in release 8, we added iOS push notifications. So now we've actually added the same push notification. We're actually using the same method and the same basically service to do push notifications against Android phones. So that basically covers I don't know, I guess Android and Apple probably are 99% of mobile phones that are out there. So this will, you know, this will support the message waiting indicator as well as the call notification and messaging. And the next slide is kind of going through exactly how it's done, but you can see that we're using Google FCM to do the pushing of the notifications through the internet. All right, then we move over to the CC Elite side of the house. So malicious call trace. So we can now with 10.1 do malicious call trace with no controller. So you don't have to actually send someone out. And sometimes I believe it required 2 people to actually try and trace a malicious caller and collect the right information to provide to the authorities or however we typically handle malicious callers. Now we're actually using SMP traps. So once you activate the malicious call trace, the trap would actually capture the extension of the activators, the dialed numbers, the malicious caller's number, as well as the IP address and a few other things that will be required to follow up and try and trace down these malicious callers. Next one is talking about AVP. So AVP in release 10 is no longer supported. In case you didn't know, AVP is Avaya's virtualized platform. It was created maybe 6 years ago, back when maybe even longer. Yeah, it probably was It probably was released about 5 or 6 years ago, but started production and kind of research. Probably about 7 years ago. It was based on a requirement by a lot of our customers that didn't have virtualization knowledge. They wanted it simplified, so we created AVP, which was actually based on VMware. So we're actually moving away from AVP now, just because part of the offer that we do have is ESXi, and you can get the servers with either AVP or ESXi pre-installed on them. We were finding that customers are logically moving towards the VMware server, as well as that's our OVAs as well. So with release 10.1, you will actually migrate over to ESXi. So if you use ESXi typically or today, no change for you. But if you do have any ASP 120s, as well as the S8300s used AVP, there is a migration process to actually get you over to, you basically create a ASP 130 out of the 120s. The 120, ASP 120 was the AVP version, and the ASP 130 was the VMware version that we've been shipping for the last couple of years. The server themselves were exactly the same servers. There was 5 different profiles. So all we had to do is come up with a migration strategy for the VMware layer. And then talking about the 130s, it actually says will ship, but we've been shipping VMware 7 on the server and the ASP 130 server since September of 2021. All right. The supported VMware levels for release 10.1 will be 6.7 as well as 7.0. And the OS level that we're using is Red Hat Linux 8.4. All right. Back in release 8, we actually introduced some different OVAs. But what we found is that there was very little uptake in the AWS as well as the KVM OVAs. So what we're doing now is that the only OVAs that we'll be shipping is VMware OVAs. If you wish to do, you can still do KVM, AWS, Azure, Nutanix, and all the other OSs and VMs, VM kind of offerings. You basically at that point will deploy them as software only. So in a software only, we just give you the Aura software. You are responsible for getting your own Red Hat 8.4 version, and then you deploy it on your own infrastructure. What that means, kind of in kind of layperson's terms, is that when you call into Avaya for support, the Avaya support team will notice that, yeah, you are a software only customer, and we troubleshoot only the Aura software itself. If you actually get the full OVA from us, and if you get the hardware from us in the 130 as well, we actually troubleshoot right from the hardware to the VMware to the Red Hat Linux to our own software as well. So it's just a little bit of a different support model when it comes to the different deployments. Next slide. Next slide, just from a security perspective, as I mentioned before, we're moving to Red Hat Linux 8.4. This gives us TLS 1.3 as well as OpenSSL 1.1.1. The other thing that it added for us as well is that we now will be able to use UEFI as our startup interface. So this replaces a normal BIOS boot mode that you would have, we've known for years and years and years. It's just a little bit more secure. It's kind of in the evolution of the lower level OS and kind of getting it starting up. So both the servers, like the 120s and the 130s, will have this enabled, as well as the OVAs as well. This will allow you, if because we're using UEFI, if you wish, you can actually go in and enable secure boot in there as well, which is just another layer of security kind of linked to the UEFI as well. In the future, you may see this coming enabled, just that with 10.1, with some of the servers and some of the OVAs, there was we just couldn't get actually with more on the server side, I believe we couldn't get them synced up so that we could actually enable it out of the factory. So you may see that coming as well, but for release 10, it is an option there that you can go ahead and enable yourself. A couple other, I don't want to say smaller, but I guess kind of just miscellaneous stuff. Push notifications can now be done through the SPC. You can use it as a proxy to push out notifications. We've added Google Chrome as well as Microsoft Edge to the System Manager browsers from a supported perspective, and this, pretty much fills out for the most part, the gamut of browsers. We now have Firefox, Chrome, as well as Edge from a choice perspective. Device Adaptor. So we're still doing some work on Device Adaptor for some of the older phones that we do have out there. So we can now use Unistem devices can now call back PSTN numbers, and then there's a couple other ones there with hotline alerts. And then the option to disable the automatic firmware updates, right? As well as the off-hook alerts for Unistem or digital or analog devices. Present services is aligned with 10.1. You can see that it uses 3.8.1 from a brief perspective, and its the latest gigaspace is 15.8. They are also using Red Hat Linux 8.4. A little bit of difference here with the Aura. suite, you will get TLS 1.3. However, with present services, they're still at 1.2 from a TLS perspective. We should be actually getting it up to TLS 1.3, but that should come in, and actually I think it may be in the next few months, but I'll have to go back and check and see when that is. The other big one from a present service perspective is the actual support for up to 10 LDAP sources now. So that's quite an improvement there. And there's some other, smaller ones there, but I shouldn't say smaller. I guess there's some other ones in there. I'll let you read through yourself. 8 new APIs. So basically, from a manageability perspective, again, this time when it's more on the, and actually I shouldn't say more, it is on the AES and the System Management Services, or SMS APIs. So now we actually can program the SMS services and configure the objects a little bit more programmatically, or there's actually a way to do it instead of doing it manually. Before, when you're actually setting up your hunt groups and your VDNs, just like it was with the session manager groups, it was a little bit cumbersome, and there's a lot of improvements here to kind of do it automatically. Again, with all these features, to get the latest and kind of a little bit more detailed review, you can actually always go to the documentation. Next slide. So on the CC Elite perspective, we're adding UNICODE support in the OSSI and actually supporting the auxiliary reason codes. And this will allow you to recognize and use different languages when it comes to setting up your applications, and Control Manager will be able to read new support or new reason codes through the same interface. CC Elite, again, look-ahead Interflow. Look-ahead Interflow is now supported over SIP trunks. So before it was just kind of in the one location. So when you're actually setting up your call vectoring with multiple call centers and multiple ACD locations, you can actually use look-ahead Interflow over the SIP trunks between the locations now versus just internally. And that actually takes us close to the end. I like kind of flashing this one up. If you were on release 8.1.3 or you're before 8.1.3, here's kind of the things you'll get. Like Spaces calling was introduced in release 8. Back then it was actually Avaya Equinox, so the clients and conferencing are, you would have gotten them back then. Now it's workplaces. We did a lot of capacity improvements in release 8. So you'll still get those if you're upgrading from 7 to 10. 7 to 10 is a direct upgrade. 8 to 10 is a direct upgrade. If you go, if you're 5 or 6, release 5 or 6, you'll actually have to do a 2-step upgrade and get to release 10. But you will still, in release 10, you will still get the higher SIP trunk and SIP agent capacity, as well as the trunks moving from 24,000 to 40,000, agents from 5,000 to 10,000. TLS connection increase, SIP trunk members increase, and the IP office branches as well. As I said before, we introduced a software-only option in release 8. It's changed a little bit, it's still there. And in both releases, the provision migration, if you do have a CS1K system, we actually have the provision tool that actually helps automate and make it a little easier to do the migration from CS1K to Aura. And just on that, there is quite a bit of activity around the CS1K old Nortel install base. There is a special Tiger team and there's special commercial offer. So if you do have a system out there that's still in CS1K, I highly recommend you talk to your account team and see what's available to get you onto an Orbit system. Right. So back in release 8, the 5 things that you would have gotten would have been release 7.4. So this is kind of a bit of a call to you as well. If you're still on release 8, the Red Hat Linux actually went end of support. I believe it was back in December. So right now you're kind of a little bit, if something does happen and we need to do a Red Hat Linux update, it may take some time or it may not be available at all. Back in release 10, we were still at TLS 1.2, and back in the old BIOS, we introduced the Apple push notification. And then back then it was VMware 6.5 and 6.7. Both of those run out of support in November. It's actually November 15th of 2022, which is this year, hard to believe. And obviously, the latest Avaya and third-party security updates that we can get are available until March of next year. 10.1, or yeah, I shouldn't say 10.1, I guess. So when you deploy the latest innovation update from a platform, you get Spaces calling 2.0 with the directory integration we talked about before. The latest workplace clients, there's a lot of work and a lot of things being done on the workplace side. Really tight integration between workplace and Spaces that we're seeing going forward. I already talked about the internet-friendly gateway. As well as the start of our upgrade enhancements with SDM, focusing on the SMGR deployments in the short term. Provision is still available for this. And actually, think about it, for last year, we actually had 28 customers that moved from an old CS1K system to the latest Aura release. At the time, it was release 8, but now, and from what I'm hearing, there's still a lot of activity around the CS1K and for this year as well. 5 things you'll get: Red Hat Linux 8.4, TLS 1.3, and OpenSSL. And like I said before, we changed the UEFI and secure boot. We added the Android push notifications. And then we're using the latest version of VMware 7.0, and this will be supported until Q4 of 2024. So you can start to see, there's quite a bit of a change in the support when it comes to the third-party applications and their underlying infrastructure of our OS as well as the VMware layer, right? And with release 10.1, you will get the latest updates and third-party security updates until Q4 of 2024. All right, and that, Julia, that's it. That's about it. So I think that's it for our slides. So I guess now we can move over to the questions. Or
Awesome, yeah. There's a few questions in the chat. If you just want to summarize or read out the question, just because everyone can't always see it before you answer, that'd be great.
Yeah, and I'm trying to make them bigger so I can actually read them. Okay, the first one, you're addressing OneCloud Private. Where does OneCloud Private play into this discussion? So the reason why I'm talking about OneCloud Private is that if you are a OneCloud Private customer, or if you're thinking of moving to OneCloud Private, the UC offer that they have is basically Aura, right? So the underlying engine of OneCloud Private is the Aura communication manager and all of the other surrounds from there. All right. Next one, can I get a copy of this presentation? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we can make a copy of this available, Julia. I'm not sure how do we typically get the, but I can work with Julie and we can figure out how to get it out.
Yeah, so the recording is always posted. I don't know if you're comfortable giving out your email address, or if you want to send us the presentation, that's fine as well.
Oh, and I see a name I recognize, Conrad Uniac. How you doing, Conrad? How does this align with JITC releases? So we do have a separate JITC release that we're going through the timeline right now. We're trying to figure out if it will be based on 10.1 or 10.2. But Conrad, feel free to reach out to me and we can have a quick discussion on that if you want. All right, Tim Moore, another name I recognize, and quite a few names I recognize there. So do security and service updates for the enterprise only apply to 8 and above, or are they also do? No, so the question is are there any security updates still available for release 7? So no, release 7 is actually end of manufacturer support. So what end of manufacturer support means is that if there's anything that is a break fix, so if you call in, so SA or service assurance or support, whatever it's called, but it's the actual services piece. So you can still call in and get support on your release 7 systems. However, the only thing that will be available is any known fixes or known bugs. there will be no more development of fixes or bug fixes for release 7, and that includes security updates. So in release 7, I believe that it was based on, I think it was like TLS 1.1 and VMware 6.0. VMware 6.0 actually went end of manufacturing support back in March of 2020. So just an example there, like we can't go to VMware and get any updates or any fixes done there. So, and the same thing with our systems in our labs. We typically don't keep the release 7 labs up just because it's an additional expense. And so, you know, even if we do find something, it will be very difficult for us to address it. All right, next one is from Carrie. How you doing, Carrie? What do we got here? Enterprise healthcare has great concerns with the timing of end of manufacturer support in March 2023 and the readiness of 10.1 release runway to upgrade. It takes 6 to 7 months to upgrade. We need to start upgrading now. All right, so. All right, so yeah, so I think Carrie, you're bringing up the so when we actually did the release in December, we actually had some software delivery issues with VMware, which impacted our S8300 release. So it didn't impact our server release because we already were using 7.0 on our servers already, but for the S8300, it took us about it took us almost 3 months to recover. That was due to the fact of we actually had Log4j that came through, which we had to kind of have put all hands on deck to address that. And then we actually had a COVID Omicron breakout in one of our development teams, which kind of slowed us down as well. So we did move the end of manufacturer support date to align with the release of the S8300 cards. So that is kind of giving you a little bit of extra space. And then if customers do require a little bit of extra time and runway to move from release 8 or whatever release you're on to release 10, there is an offer that is available at a charge for, you know, you can get an extra 12 months of manufacturer support if you need that. This is exactly the same timeline that we worked with going from release 7 to release 8. So it isn't anything new. I think it's just kind of a little bit more, people are starting to realize more now that, hey, when something goes into manufacturing support, the security updates go away with it as well. So it is exactly the same what we did like for the last 4 or 5 years. Just that now I think people are, for the reasons I listed, are paying attention a little bit more. Right? And then Carrie, again, we were told the G450 still supported some levels. First release of 10.x, do you have more information on the scope of this support? Currently migrating to G450s, but may not be 100% compliant by the time we go to 10.x. Yeah, so the G650 is a little bit complicated. Of course, we always going to make it complicated. The G650s are end of manufacturer support themselves. So if you find an issue with the G650, most likely we won't be able to fix it. It is an older system. There's not a lot of things we can do to kind of fix issues that we had. We tried to fix as much as we could in 10.1. So basically what we did was we added support for the G650s back into 10.1. However, if we do find issues with it, we probably won't be able to fix it. I know that's a bit ambiguous, but it is supported. However, we do know that some of the issues surrounding the processing power and the compute of the G650s is part of kind of the main problem there. So if you are still using G650s, it's perfectly fine in 10.1. What I would recommend is don't overload it, don't overtax it, because that's when you're going to kind of run into more problems. So it's, you know, if it takes you some time to get the G450s out, or sorry, the G650s out and the G450s in, that's perfectly fine because they are supported in release 10. All right, and then the next one is this being recorded for future viewing? Yes. I think I got a thank you. Thank you, William. And then great presentation. Any roadmap for IX messaging? Yep, there is a roadmap for IX messaging. And Julie, maybe we can take in, just remind me to kind of contact the IX messaging person. It's actually Cyril Dowling. Cyril will come on and do some updates for you guys, I'm sure. Will this slide be available? Yes. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Marlo. Where can we get the release 10.1 documentation? The functional changes will present. It's on the portal. Yeah, all documentations are already on the portal. Yeah, it looks like, Julie, there's lots of people once the.
Yeah, I got those. I'll make sure to get that out to everyone.
And Conrad is making fun of the fact that he's recognizing the old pictures in there. It's Paul. Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of it is. Thank you. We will. And Carrie, and I kind of said it. Should have mentioned this again. I did say it, but you may have missed it. Is that we are working on the offer. So the offer is going through our AGSP process. So our basically our introduction process, and we're hoping to have it actually out and published. And we'll do a bit of a roadshow on the offer as well in the next, I would say, 2 months. All right, thank you. And I think, yeah, it looks like the rest of them when will the recording be available?
By the end of the day, it should be.
Okay.
There's one from Mark, AVP in R10. I don't know if you got that one.
I missed that one. Oh, okay, yeah. AVP in R10 no longer will support what's going to happen to S8300 using AVP. So the S8300s, the S8300's AVP is based on the, VMware foundations. So we actually have a program with the S8300s where you're going to migrate those S8300s to just plain, I don't want to say plain, but I guess maybe the VMware standard, typical VMware foundations. So there won't be anything that we kind of do to it and change it in-house. It just will be the vanilla VMware foundations instead of the AVP version. And I see there was a question that seems to be jumping. So our one cloud private and public are based on, well, depends on what you mean by one cloud public, because our one cloud public is based on ACO, which is the Ring Central offer. And then there's one from Clarissa. Is there an opportunity to have Avaya conduct a system audit consultant on existing systems to determine? Yes, absolutely. There is actually a free APS offer, Clarissa. They're called the APS. Go in the APS and look up APS scorecards. And unfortunately, I did have one up, and I shut it down in rebooting my system. But they will go in, they will log in through Sal and do an extensive audit of your system. Take a look at all the hardware, all the DSPs and software and vintages and VMware and all the things that make up your system, and help you kind of take a look at what you need to do to either move to cloud, move to subscription, and all that good stuff. So again, it's APS scorecards, and I think you may be able to do a APS scorecards at avaya.com. Should actually get you in contact with them. Don't hold me to that address. Go and look up APS scorecards, but I think that's the right address. What's happening to the S8300F variant? That's coming. That's a 10.2 deliverable, the S8300F. So right now, for the others, for anyone that's not aware, we are currently shipping S8300Es. The next generation is the S8300F, which is aligned to 10.2. So, and I guess the timeline answer is the fall.
There's one more, is Workspaces going forward as a desktop? I don't know if you caught that one.
So Workspaces, yeah. So what's happening is that the Workspaces workplace, there's a lot of discussion on the integration of spaces with Workspaces and all of the above. So yeah, there will be. It is definitely going forward as a desktop client, but you'll see closer integration with Spaces, right? And again, this is my speculation. I don't have direct control over what's happening in those areas, but from what I'm seeing, that's where I think it's going to go. Any voicemail platform update that will be included in the IX messaging. That's the same person that will be covering that as well. And Julie, did I miss anything? Because mine kind of jumps around when a new question is added.
I don't think so. That looks like everything. And if anyone has any other questions, they can email IAUG as well, and we can forward that to you. Oh, we have one from Anna that just popped in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That the push notification for the Android was what was added in 10.1. We added push notifications for iPhone in 8, and now we have both iPhone as well as Android.
Okay, that looks like all the questions. So thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Darrell, for taking the time to speak with us today. As a reminder, this webinar is recorded and it will be available for on-demand viewing, and you will receive an email with a link in about 24 hours with the link to the recording. And also, please make sure to complete the short evaluation that will pop up as you exit the webinar. And again, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.